Baba Yaga didn't eat people because she was evil. She ate them because they were stupid. Every single person who walked into that forest and didn't come back had a chance. She asked them a question first. One question. And they either answered it honestly or they did not. And that is it. That's literally the whole test. The witch with the chicken leg hut, the skull fence, and the iron teeth was actually operating a fairer system than most of the institutions that we trust with our lives today, which isn't hard to do currently, but anyways, and I think that's worth talking about. Hi friends, I'm Betty Rage. Welcome to Lashes and Lore, and if you are new here, this is where we tell dark stories while I crochet a little. We dissect the lore that people try to gloss over. Occasionally I go a little too hard on folklore and witches, but whatever, that's what I do. So like a normal Tuesday over here. I used to have a different format where I'd put on my makeup and tell you the story, give you the lore. But now I crochet, and each week I make a new granny square that's going to make some kind of Frankenstein blanket. So this is our yarn this week, and I've gotten started on that. It's not really about watching me do the crochet. It's more about giving my hands something to do so I can stay focused. The unique thing about this pile of yarn here, every scrap is coming from a thrifted sweater or something like that was on its way to a landfill until I pulled it apart. And over the next few months, we're going to Frankenstein the crap out of a blanket together and see what we end up with. We can talk about it more over on my Patreon if you'd like to join there. Here's a link. Not really sure what the heck it's going to look like, but you'll have to keep coming back and find out what it's going to do. I have a whole business that I'm launching called Reanimate Threads, where I do this. I take things that are old and I unravel them and make something new and make some products for people who might want to purchase them. So follow along for more. All right, I have my energy drink and my adorable cozy that I made. So we're ready to start. And if you want to get my next energy drink, you can click that link right there. So, Baba Yaga. Most people know, like the broad strokes. Old woman, lives in the woods, a hut on chicken legs, eats children, general nightmare, She shows up in Russian and Eastern European folklore as the thing that parents described when they really just needed their kids to stop wandering off into the woods. It's okay. Survival is important. But she's the witch, the villain, the monster in the trees. But except she's actually not. And she never was. And the reason that we think that she is says a lot more about who got to rewrite the stories than it does about her. So here's what the scholars will tell you if you go looking. Baba Yaga predates the fairy tale. She predates written versions. She predates Afanasiev's collection of them in the 19th century. She predates most of the framework that we use to understand her. Folklorist Marija Gimbutas called her the ancient Slavic goddess of death and regeneration, with roots in pre-Indo-European matrilinear tradition. Vladimir Prop, who basically wrote the book on Russian folktale structure, identified her as the female totemic ancestor. So we're not really talking about like campfire stories here that somebody invented in order to scare kids. We're talking about something that was at some point genuinely sacred. And the detail we keep coming back to, and all of it across every version, every regional variation, every retelling, she literally answers to nobody. No God, no devil, no king, no narrative obligation to be good or evil on anyone else's terms. She just is. She operates by her own code, in her own forest, and on her own schedule. Queen, work. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's talk about the hut, because I do kind of feel like it gets treated as a quirky detail when it's absolutely not a quirky detail. The hut stands on chicken legs. Cool, right? It spins, it faces the forest until you know the right words to make it face you. It's surrounded by a fence that is made of bones topped with skulls. The skulls glow. And if you come at that as a horror image, sure, it is terrifying. But if you come at it as a symbol, it's doing a little bit something that's completely different. There are two competing theories about where the chicken legs actually come from, but as I said they're competing, but they kind of both point to the same place. The first one comes from historian Alexandra Barkova, who connects the hut to an above ground burial practice, a Mordvinian people in central Russia. Yes, I struggle with words, okay? Give me a little bit of a break, okay? But their shamans weren't buried in the ground. They were kept elevated, like on raised wooden stumps, specifically to kind of hold them between the two worlds. Not fully dead, not fully gone, but like watchable, consultable. And the stumps had spreading roots that could look like feet. And if you were a child hearing a story by firelight, they would be looking like exactly like legs, chicken legs, right? So the second theory is a little bit more practical, so we'll go over that one as well. Hunter-gatherer peoples across Siberia built doorless, windowless supply cabins on tree stumps high cut off the ground, roots splayed out underneath to keep all of the animals away. It was a real structure and a real landscape that looked like it was standing on legs. So oral tradition grabbed onto it and ran. But either way, you arrive kind of at the same thing, a structure on the border, 1 foot in the living world and one in whatever is on the other side. The skull fence isn't a trophy wall. Those glowing eyes, they're watchful, ancestral. You're not looking at evidence of her kills. You're looking at a guardianship. You're looking at a threshold that knows who is going to be crossing it. And nobody stumbles into the hut. You go there and say the right words, and you cross the boundary, and then you meet her. And when you meet her, she asks you a question. Not, are you delicious? How should I cook you? She asks you, are you doing a deed or are you fleeing a deed? And that is documented. That's in Afanasyev's collection, which is the closest thing that we have to a primary source on any of these stories. It's the first thing out of her mouth every time across multiple tales. Before she feeds you, before she sets you any tasks, before she decides what you are to her, she asks you that question, and you better have an honest answer for her. Vasilisa the Beautiful is a story that makes this the clearest. Let's do a quick Cliff's Notes on this story. Girl's mother dies. Father remarries badly. Stepmother is a nightmare. Stepsisters are worse. One night, the fire goes out in the house, which in a Russian winter is not a minor inconvenience. It's like a death sentence, so gotta do something. So the stepmother sends Vasilisa into the forest, go and get fire from Baba Yaga. And it's not like, go down to the creek and fetch a pail of water. No, everyone knows what lives in that forest, and the stepmother is trying to get rid of this child. So Vasilisa goes anyway. Her dead mother left her a magical doll that guides her, and because she doesn't really have a lot of options, she arrives at the hut. She says the right words, and she goes inside. Baba Yaga sets her some tasks. Impossible tasks. Sort a mountain of millet grain by morning. Clean the entire hut. Cook dinner. Vasilisa does all of it with the doll's help. Because she works hard and she's respectful and she doesn't complain. When Baba Yaga asks how she's managing to do all of this, Vasilisa answers honestly. You better answer honestly to Baba Yaga. When Vasilisa asks questions, she asks carefully and only about things that she's been told that you're allowed to ask. She doesn't pry, she doesn't push. She understands instinctively that there are rules here and that the rules really matter, and it's a matter of life and death. Baba Yaga gives her the fire. Specifically, she gives her a skull with burning eyes, and Vasilisa carries it home. The skull looks at the stepmother and the stepsisters and immediately incinerates them. Goodbye. Justice delivered. Clean, efficient, proportional. And the monster in that story is the stepmother who sent a child into the forest to die. So, Baba Yaga knows that. She just ran the evaluation. The skull was less of a gift and more of a verdict. And that's kind of the thing about tales about people who don't really make it out. So the code's pretty consistent across the fairy tales here. Come humble, work hard, answer honestly, and don't ask what you're not supposed to ask. And that's it. That's pretty much Baba Yaga's whole thing. She's not cruel for the sake of being cruel or evil. She has a standard and she applies it to everything without any kind of exception, which is more than you can say for most of the systems that claim to be fair, especially today. So, okay, how did we get from goddess of death and regeneration, ancient totemic ancestor, keeper of the threshold, to Halloween witch who eats kids? The short answer is a new religious framework arrived and needed somewhere to put her. They squashed her. Christianity moved into Slavic regions, like it do. Starting around the 7th century, by the 12th century, it had significant hold across much of Eastern Europe. And when it arrived, it brought a very specific moral architecture with it. Good and evil, God and devil, light and dark. A figure like Baba Yaga, who existed entirely outside of that kind of architecture, who answered to nobody, who was simultaneously capable of helping you and destroying you at the same time, depending entirely on whether you deserved it. She didn't fit. There was no category for her, so they made one. And if you hear a story with Baba Yaga and the devil appears, he was never in the Baba Yaga story. He's a Christian character, and his absence from the original tales is the fingerprint of what came later. When he starts showing up in later versions, when Baba Yaga starts being framed as working in opposition to Christian goodness, that's the story getting rewritten around a new set of assumptions. The divine, feminine, ungovernable, and ambiguous got reassigned. A figure who had once represented the full cycle of things: death, regeneration, destruction, and simply evil. The ambiguity got resolved because ambiguity is threatening. It's threatening when you're trying to run a coherent theological framework, and a goddess who answers to no one is considerably more threatening than a witch who serves the devil. So, and it does get a little bit bleak here because we don't have the oldest stories. The oral tradition that predates the written record, and what Afanassiev collected in the 19th century, was already centuries downstream from the original. We're reading the retrofitted Baba Yaga and calling her the original, and we've been doing it so long that the retrofit feels like the truth. So she was always ambiguous, and that was always the point. The version where she's just a monster is actually the lie. Okay, so tabletop corner, because Baba Yaga has been in Dungeons and Dragons since 1979, and I think that's genuinely fascinating. And I also play D&D, so you're gonna hear about it. Gary Gygax put her hut in the original Dungeon Master's Guide as a legendary artifact, which is kind of cool. Not her, but just the hut. The hut was so iconic, so immediately understood as a thing of immense, unknowable power. It made it into the foundational document of the game before she even arrived. But she did get her own adventurer module in Dragon Magazine in 1984. A full module in 1995, and in the 2024 Monster Manual, she is classified as an arch-hag at a challenge rating of 21, which, for context, a challenge rating 21 creature will end your party. Most campaigns never see anything above a challenge rating 20. So she is mechanically one of the most dangerous stat blocks in the entire game of D&D. And now I have goosebumps because that's how nerdy I am. Okay, but there's plenty of lore out there, but the lore detail that I just can't stop thinking about is that Baba Yaga is the adoptive mother of Tasha, as in Tasha's cauldron of everything, as in Tasha's hideous laughter, the spell that has been making wizards absolutely insufferable at tables since, 1984. That Tasha. In the lore is Natasha the Dark. And then later she is the Witch Queen. She has about 7 other names depending on which source book that you're reading because she's that kind of character. She was raised in the dancing hut. Baba Yaga adopted her as a child and named her and taught her to summon demons at the age of 10, which is a parenting choice, of course, but stick with me. Tasha went on to become one of the most powerful spellcasters in the entire D&D multiverse. She wrote the Demonomicon. Yeah, that's right. Essentially, the definitive encyclopedia of demon lords. She took on demon lords and won. She traveled the plains, accumulating knowledge and power, and left a trail of legendary spells with her name on them that players are still using 50 years later. Baba Yaga took in a human child, tested her, trained her, gave her everything that she needed, and produced one of the greatest wizards in the D&D multiverse that we've ever seen. And I don't know, that's not really a villain's origin story. That's like a mentor. But this is what it looks like when somebody applies the code and it works. So you're not going to get away from me without me having a little bit of a mom moment here. That question, the one that Baba Yaga asks, are you doing a deed or are you fleeing a deed? I keep coming back to it because it doesn't ask what you want or where you came from or who sent you or what your intentions are. It asks you to locate yourself honestly in relation to your own actions. Are you moving towards something that matters? Or are you running away from something you don't want to deal with? And maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but the reason it hits because most of the systems that we actually live inside never ever ask this question. And not like that anyway. You can move through enormous institutions, workplaces, relationships, entire phases of your life and never once be asked to account for yourself in those kinds of terms. You just keep moving. Just keep swimming. In the absence of that question, lets a lot of people, myself included, mistake fleeing for doing a very long time. I think about the moments in my life where someone or something finally made me stop and answer that question, like really answer it. And it was never comfortable. It was never the version where I came out looking great, but it was always the version where someone or something actually changed. Baba Yaga doesn't ask because she's trying to be cruel. She asks because she's the only one in the forest who needs the truth. She can't do anything useful with a lie, and really neither can you. The test only works if the answer is real. And I think that there's something really genuinely worth sitting with in the fact that the figure folklore decided to make the villain is the one who required honesty as the price of entry. What are we even doing? Everyone else in these stories, the kings, the stepmothers, the heroes with their magic swords, they're allowed to lie, manipulate, perform. Baba Yaga is the only one who won't let you. And maybe that's exactly why they made her the monster, because they didn't want you to see who they really were. So, Baba Yaga, the goddess before she was a witch, threshold keeper before she was a monster, a figure that is so ungovernable, so genuinely outside every power structure that ever tried to claim her, that the easiest thing to do was to make her a villain and just hope that nobody looked too closely. Spoiler alert, people looked too closely. She had a code and she applied it without exception across hundreds of stories, hundreds of centuries of oral tradition, across every version that survived the rewrite. Come humble, work hard, answer honestly, and don't ask what you're not supposed to ask. Do that and she'll give you exactly what you came for. every single time. The people who didn't make it out of that forest weren't victims. They were failures of their own integrity. She just administered the consequences. And honestly, I respect it. I respect it a lot. And if I sparked an interest for you for the D&D deep dive, the 2024 Monster Manual has her arch-hag stat block and is humbling, to say the least. And if you want some more blashes and lore, you should check out this next video right here. Comment chicken legs below so I know that you made it this far in the video. Here is our square for this episode. She's pretty cute. She'll go nicely with the one from before. If you want to talk some more about Baba Yaga, get down in the comments. Let's chat it out. Until next time, be good to each other, love each other, make good choices, and as always, free mom hugs from me to you. Bye. Check out this one next.